A procession
Thank you.
of the brave. And outside in Parliament Square, you can see that the Tri-Service Guard of Honour is now in place, facing New Palace Yard, facing the Elizabeth Tower, and ready for that procession to begin. The route from the Hall along Broad Sanctuary to Westminster Abbey, lined by personnel from the Royal Navy and the Royal Marines. And of course, we've been focusing in recent days on Westminster Hall. There it is, the most ancient part of the Palace of Westminster, dating from around 1097. And during its long history, it's been all kinds of things. It's been a courthouse, it's been a market, it's been a dining room. Well, it's still there. It's a vast space, great sense of history. It's oak, hammer beam roof, and of course it is the perfect setting, ground setting for a monarch's lying in state. Now the massed pipes and drums, well, they've also reached Parliament Square. They're ready to lead off the procession. The drum majors doing their work immaculately as usual. And just across from them there, facing Parliament, the Guard of Honour, involving the Army and Navy and Air Force, and the Royal Marines Band, also there to accompany the Tri-Service Guard of Honour. The bearer party, that's the party that will be in charge of transferring the coffin from the catafalque to the gun carriage. Well, that's provided appropriately by the Queen's Company 1st Battalion Grenadier Guards, and they will soon be in place in Westminster Hall itself. That's the Guard of Honour that we're seeing there, but the bearer party is soon to be inside. And of course, very appropriate that when we see the Queen's Company, we just think about the fact that its strong bond with Her Majesty is underlined today, because of course the company commander, the Queen's Company, was Her Majesty the Queen. So it's a special day for the regiment, no question about that, and an even more special day for the Queen's Company. Now, if you'd like more information about the procession order, you can find a specially made graphic on the BBC News Online part of the website, which details the formation and those taking part. There it is, bbc.co.uk/news, who is in the main procession. And just for me to say this to you, to all of you watching, because this is, I think is quite an important thing for me to share at this point. These processions are very solemn events. We're talking about a state funeral. So the reason we're giving you all of that information online, especially to do with individuals, is because we don't really think it's appropriate to talk over lots of these processions. And I hope that you understand why we're saying that. So if people want to see individuals named who are taking part, well, then it's available for you online. But when we cover these processions live on BBC One here, we are doing so with minimal commentary, because we feel that is the most respectful way of covering what is a state funeral today. So that's the plan, and I hope that that message is one that you are receiving positively. And with that in mind, let me introduce my next guest, because Paddy Harverson is the former Communications Secretary to, well, the King and Queen Consort now, and indeed the Prince of Wales and the Princess of Wales now, but in a different capacity, a previous capacity. Thank you for coming in, Paddy.
My pleasure.
It's nice to have you with us. What does today mean for you?
A lot, personally. I mean, having worked for the King and the Queen Consort for 10 years, and for Princes William and Harry, to see all of this play out. We actually, as part of his team, were the first to work on the accession on these 10 days back in sort of, I think about 2005-6. We dusted off the old plan. So to see it play out so beautifully, so elegantly, so in such dignified manner. And then the King himself, honestly, I can't say how, it sounds a bit odd to say I'm proud of him, but he's just been magnificent. And I particularly loved his message today is saying thank you to the people, because in a way he's had to lead his family in mourning, but also the nation in mourning. And I think in a weird way the nation has sort of put its arm around him and hugged him close. And I think he's really that's helped him get through this.
The big moment maybe was when he made that first televised address just after the Queen's death, and his eloquence and his readiness really to show how moved he was, I think affected lots of people, and they were genuinely impressed with that, and they were impressed with the way in which he was authentic and honest with people.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not normally an emotional man, but I cried. I found it a wonderful combination of the personal and the constitutional. He talked as the son of his mother, and also as now the father of the nation, but also very specifically talked about how he would take on the role of king, how he would strive to live up to his mother's example. He also appointed his eldest son as Prince of Wales, so it was full of sort of constitutional importance, but also very personal, and I think all week we've seen that.
I think we can see Mark Drakeford, the First Minister of Wales, and other political leaders entering the Abbey there. And just underlining again, Paddy, at this point, First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, also coming in. Just to underline the fact that this is a state funeral today, which involves all parts of the UK. Of course, it's taking place in London, but not just all parts of the UK. We've just seen President Macron and President Biden and other world leaders too. It's a British event. In many ways, it's typically British, but it's a global event too.
It is, and of course the King knows all these leaders, having met them many times. There was a lovely touch there where the President of the United States sort of was waiting and had to wait for the heroes to go ahead of him, and I thought that said a lot. But it's been great to see so many come to London to pay their respects to the Queen, and of course to the new King and his wife, the Queen Consort. So a truly global event.
When people assess the legacy of this just momentous reign of 70 years, and it'll take a long time to assess it properly, because it's far too early still to take a considered view of all of it. Will it be dominated by thoughts of the Commonwealth and the fact that we live in a far more diverse Britain than we used to, and the fact that the Queen has presided over unprecedented change in society? Or will it be dominated by thoughts about how the family try to modernise itself? I mean, where do you think the focus will be?
I think it's that sort of magical combination, really, of how the monarchy must represent continuity through, in this case, 70 years through and the Queen must embody that continuity and yet also adapt. And I think the royal family's been very good over the years at very subtly changing, and it's never been at the forefront of change, but always at the right moment, adapting to it. And I think the new King, in a way, personifies that. He took on many great issues as Prince of Wales. He was ahead of his time. He kept, in a way, the monarchy relevant as Prince of Wales, and I know his son William will be doing the same.
Well, the King did release a statement within the past 12 hours or so, where he thanked people for their support. And there was a note of real sincerity in the thanks, almost as if he'd been slightly taken aback by the extent of people's support and sympathy. Do you think that's fair?
I think that is right, yes. But watching him sort of out and about, around the Four Nations and meeting and greeting people, you could see how touched he's been. And I think it's just been an enormous source of strength to him and the family.
Paddy, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. It's good to see you. There we can see the Prime Minister until recently, Boris Johnson, arriving with his wife, and one of the former Prime Ministers again behind Mr Johnson. We have Theresa May and Philip May. So we have a real collection of people that the Queen will have got to know rather well, including David Cameron and his wife, who are just arriving now to be greeted by the Dean and others. Let's join Fergal again.
Well, as we watch the arrival of former Prime Ministers, we should tell you that the leaders of the nations of the United Kingdom have also begun to arrive. The First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, who last week, at a special sitting of the Scottish Parliament, said that for more than 70 years, Queen Elizabeth has been the great constant in our national life. She's inspired us, on occasion comforted us, and always personified values we hold dear. We can see the leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer. And Keir Starmer. And sitting near him, Ian Blackford, the SNP leader in the House of Commons. Michelle O'Neill of Sinn Féin, now Deputy First Minister of Northern Ireland, sitting almost directly behind Ian Blackford. And now Tony Blair and his wife Cherie arriving, and behind them John Major and his wife Norma. Mark Drakeford, the First Minister of Wales. At her wedding to Prince Philip in 1947, the bride's wedding ring was made from Welsh gold, and Her Majesty later remarked on the significance of the ring, saying, "I carry a small reminder of this country wherever I go." This unique procession of former Prime Ministers now moving towards their seats. And as we look at this assembly of Prime Ministers, former Prime Ministers, foreign heads of state, we're reminded yet again of Queen Elizabeth's place in reconciling, particularly in Northern Ireland, where her presence, her influence helped the bringing about of a negotiated peace. We are reminded too, of course, that she worked with 15 Prime Ministers, the first of them Winston Churchill, to whom she wrote a handwritten letter on his retirement, and for whom she accepted an invitation to dinner at Downing Street, a very rare thing. And finally, now, the last Prime Minister of Queen Elizabeth's reign, Liz Truss, with her husband Hugh O'Leary. Miss Truss met the Queen at Balmoral just 2 days before her death, when, for the last time in her reign, she appointed a Prime Minister.
So as the Prime Minister is greeted there by the Dean of Westminster and by the Archbishop of Canterbury, she'll be joining, of course, her predecessors, including Tony Blair, Gordon Brown and John Major, Boris Johnson, Theresa May, and they're all seated in the same section of the Abbey. Now, let's take a look at Buckingham Palace, because we expect the next phase in this series of events to be happening here. We expect to be seeing quite a few cars leaving Buckingham Palace from the grand entrance and carrying members of the royal family to Westminster Hall. So they're not going to the Abbey immediately, they're going to Westminster Hall to see the coffin being transferred formally, and that they will take their place then in the procession to the Abbey. So senior members of the royal family, and Robert Hardman still with me. Katie Nicholl, the royal biographer, has joined me as well. Katie, thank you for joining us too. We'll obviously be back at Buckingham Palace as soon as we see some of the vehicles leaving. But Katie, given that we know that these members of the royal family are part of the procession, they are senior members and they will be there with the King, of course, who will be leading that royal contingent.
Very much so. I mean, you're seeing everything that is about the Constitution, what we would expect of a state funeral, but we're also seeing a big emphasis on the family. As I think it's important to point out, we have done since the beginning. The Queen's children have been by her side ever since her death. And actually earlier on, the Royal Princess Anne spoke about what an honour and a privilege it had been to make that final journey back from Scotland to England, and this final journey now.
Well, the scenes are quite magnificent. We've seen the Mall, which is decked in Union flags for the procession itself, and of course, when you see the view here, Robert, with some of the cars on their way already from Buckingham Palace, here we are. It's a view like no other, and it's one that we're used to on days like the birthday parade or Jubilees. This is obviously a very different day. What's in common, of course, is the spectacle and how impressive it is.
Yes, Hugh, every few minutes we see these extraordinary images that will just stand out, will define
It's quite a business,
this day of all days. And I think it's important to remember that today we're actually going to see 3 royal processions. I mean, for the King, for his siblings, for the senior members of the family. There has never been, I can't recall a day when we'll have seen them processing from Westminster Hall to the Abbey, all the way through London, and then again at Windsor. But that is the nature of that word, unprecedented. But so much about today is unprecedented. The idea that we have this extraordinary event unfolding here at Westminster Abbey and the service of committal at St George's Chapel. In the past, as you mentioned earlier, that's where royal funerals tended, well, have all been since George II. There's a Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, just underlining the fact that all the realm prime ministers are here, everybody's here. I mean, this is a reminder, I think, of a word that we should remember when we're talking about Her Late Majesty, stateswoman. I mean, the whole world is here on a scale we've never seen before. I mean, at her own coronation, at the funeral of George VI, obviously in the days before jet travel, it was harder for people to get here, but we have an extraordinary collection.
Jacinda Ardern there from New Zealand. We've also caught a glimpse of the Prime Minister of New Zealand as well, in the same group as Mr Trudeau, and just underlining the point you were making there, Robert, really. And of course, Jacinda Ardern,
I'm just going to the toilet and
own
coming
contribution
back.
in terms of the tributes we've heard. Lots of tributes, Katie, really, and they followed similar themes, I think it's fair to say. One or two personal